All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 46 of the Rankin Technical College online AWD1000 Web Development Technologies class. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to go over two additional JavaScript document object model apps. They will include the use of both the use of the DOM and the use of timers. All right, I added a little bit of extra stuff in here that you probably wouldn't really have to worry about. Now, I want you to remember that tomorrow will be your last hands-on test. JavaScript hands-on test number 3 or JS hot number 3. It will be virtually on, totally on chapter 6. I don't even know if there's anything in there from 7, to be honest with you. I will email the test to you by 7 a.m. We'll go over it between 8:05 and 8:20. You'll have the rest of the period to work on it on Wednesday and the entire period to work on it on Friday. As I'd mentioned to you the other day, Thursday is what we call a shadow attack day, and I'm supposed to have a person over at the Janesville campus kind of shadowing me. So we will be going over jQuery chapters 8 and 9 on Thursday, and we'll go over a couple of examples. We won't take the entire period. Then next Monday, Friday's a lab, as it says. Next Monday, we'll go over chapters 10 and 11 of jQuery, and again, a couple of the examples. Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week, as much time as we need, we will be building a website together. It's a code along exercise. You don't have to turn it in. You don't even have to do it if you don't want to, but it'll hopefully put to rest and put together a lot of the regular JavaScript stuff that we've been doing and some of the jQuery stuff that we've been doing as well. Now, just so you're aware of it, I'm telling you this way in advance, not this Friday, the 3rd, but next Friday, not this coming Friday, but next Friday, November 10th, there will be no class. And that is the reason there will be no class is it is Veterans Day, and that is a school holiday. So there won't be any class on Friday, November 10th. All right. Please remember that this Sunday, both your chapters 6 and 7 hands-on tests, which again will be handed out tomorrow, JS Hot 3, and your chapter 6 and 7 written tests and homework will be due by Sunday at midnight. We'll go over all that, all right, tomorrow and Friday, or tomorrow or Thursday rather, just to make sure everybody's aware of what you're supposed to be doing. So I gave you this. It's called moredom.zip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it right away, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. So moredom.zip. All right, so it should be being saved there right now. And there it is, moredom.zip. So I'm going to unzip it. And there it is right there. So I'm going to get rid of the zip file and open up my moredom folder. Now, if you look at it right now, and unfortunately, I don't know why, but I grabbed this from a project I'd been working on earlier, and then I amended it. But the names in here are wrong for the titles. That should just say BMI. All right, the next one should say, yeah, that's fine, guessing game about. That should say game. How about guessing game? And finally, the last page should say, well, one was BMI about, and one was BMI calculation. About. All right, so just let me save those, and I'm going to close this right away and bring it up in our old friend VS Code. All right, so let's do that right now. So again, this is moredom, and I'm going to open it right now with Visual Studio Code. You will notice that after I do that and bring it up, as soon as I come in and bring up one of the pages. It doesn't really matter, but I'll bring up the BMI about page. All right. And I'm going to open this with live server. And this is what it looks like right now. Okay. Not much. There is an about page. It's got a little bit of information about BMI, a guessing game about page with a little bit of information about guessing game, the BMI page itself, which I want to make that one bigger, and the guessing game page itself. And again, I'll make that one bigger as well. Okay, so this is what we've got. I'm not going to say or a word about the BMI about page or about the guessing game about page. All right, those are fine. You can read those yourselves, if you're interested, and if you're not, then you won't. But I want to start writing the JavaScript right away for the BMI. We'll see how much of it we can get done. If we get it all done and then it's time for a break, fine. If we get it done and we still have some time, we'll start on the next one. We may be done early today. In fact, almost certainly we will. So I'm going to go into the JS folder, and I'm looking here on the About page. It's showing there is an error in there, which means there's a div, and it says must be paired. So it must mean I have another end for that div someplace. Div. Not sure what the problem is. I mean, it's not causing it, doing anything as far as not letting it work or anything. So, oh, it's showing. Oh, it's because I have another p tag here with nothing in it. That's what the problem is. That should be an ending p tag here. And now I can have my ending div. There we go. All right. So with all that said, let's go into the JavaScript, and I'm going to open up the calc bmi.js program. We'll start with that one. Now, I'm not going to read this. You've seen this before as far as the comment. All right. It is a BMI program. Now, just so you're aware of it, in this BMI program, we are not keeping track of totals. All right, I want to say that again, we're not keeping track of totals. So I've got my use strict statement should have a semicolon on the end, and it doesn't. And my const, where I'm doing my aliasing again, should have a semicolon on the end, and for whatever reason, it didn't. So I put in here about 9 constants. So I'm going to declare and initialize the program constants. Now, I did mention this, that when I create constants in JavaScript client side, like we're doing right now, I do all of them in uppercase. Those of you who next semester will be taking the AWD1000 C# programming class, again, you basically set up your constants in uppercase. Okay, so now those right there, that is the minimum allowable height, the minimum allowable weight, the maximum allowable height, and the maximum allowable weight. All right, nothing new there. And again, as I mentioned, these are just things I came up with. All right. And if you wanted to do this, let's say you wanted to do it for a gym, then maybe the minimum height would be like 36, that you'd want a person to be at least 3 feet tall, something like that. But I just did it the way I did. I picked arbitrary values. All right, that made sense, at least to me. Now, these three things, the min optimal, the min over, and the min obese, you've seen this before. They're going to be used in my tests. So if a person is less than this, they're underweight. Else, if a person is less than this, they're optimal weight. All right. Otherwise, if they're less than, so in other words, if they're less than 18.5, they're optimal. Okay. If they're between 18.5, but less than 25, okay, they're going to actually be, let's say this again. Let's do it right. If a person is less than 18.5, if their BMI is less than 18.5, they're considered underweight. If a person has a BMI between 18.5 but less than 25, they're optimal weight. If their BMI is greater than or equal to 25 but less than 30, they're overweight. And if their BMI is 30 or above, they're obese. All right. These will be the two weight messages I'll have. I call them HOOR, which was height, out of range, and we could have put the words OOR in there as well. I just did it like this. And I have another one for weight. If you find that confusing, again, you could put the actual out of range like that. I just put OOR. I thought that was sufficient. All right, so those are my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 different program constants. All right. Again, nothing really new there. And I also had 6 variables. Now, there are a couple new things in here, or at least one. All right. Is valid isn't new. We're assuming that you're going to read in a valid height and a valid weight. We will check both those. If what you enter in there is non-numeric, or if what you enter in there is out of range, meaning for the height it's less than 12 or greater than 96, then is valid will be set to false. And the same kind of thing with weight. If we put in something non-numeric or a weight that's less than 1 or a weight that is greater than Good morning, Daniel. You're the only one here right now, which I said is fine. I'm starting to go over the I sent everybody a zip file this morning with a starter program in it. And all I've done so far is go over the comments, which is nothing new. The use strict, which I forgot to put a semicolon on the end. Same thing with the alias. I forgot to put a semicolon on. Then we declared 9 different constants, and I think there's nothing new here. I mean, for the height, as I mentioned, I could have said out of range instead of OOR, but I just did it like that. And now we're going over the 6 different program variables that we have in here. And as mentioned, we're assuming that the user is going to put in a valid height and the user is going to put in a valid weight. That's what we're assuming. All right. If they put in a height that's either empty, non-numeric, or out of range, then is valid will be set to false. Same kind of thing with a weight. Okay. All right. A little bit later, they'll figure out their status, and I think their status is actually the BMI, so I could have called it that. All right. They got the status and we got the result. In fact, the status might be underweight, overweight, obese, or optimal weight, and the result is probably the BMI. This ELEM, that's going to be something that we're going to end up using in a little bit And what we want to be able to do in here, I put something different in here. I tried to bring in something from chapter 7. So when we run this eventually, I'm going to close this. I don't need that file. Sure. But when I bring this one up right here, this BMI.html, okay? And when we run this, the idea is going to be that if we put nothing in here, or if we put in a height that's out of weight and or a weight that's out of weight, out of our limits, and we click calculate, we're going to get messages here or here. All right. Resetting the form will reset it. Other than that, there's not really a whole heck of a lot new, except for the fact what you're going to see now. You may care, you may not. But when we figure out the person's BMI, and we figure out, and in here it says either underweight, overweight, optimal weight, or obese, we're going to have a little picture. It's a little cartoon that we're going to put in there as well. All right. Plus, if let's say we come in here and we put in a number that's out of range, we're going to get a message here. This is going to change to an error message, and we'll count to about 5. And then what you'll notice is after that, that error message will disappear. This will disappear, and we'll put the focus back there, just so you get the idea of how to use timeouts as well. All right. Okay, and these are just our height and our weight, so there's nothing new there. So let's start writing some code now. And again, I tried using arrow functions with as much of this as I possibly could. And I call the first thing calculate. Now, I know I've mentioned this before, but I want to say it again. Let's say that for whatever reason, you find writing functions like this very confusing. You just don't get it. Well, in most other programming languages, not JavaScript, but in most other programming languages, instead of writing that this way, you'd write it like this: function, calculate, and then you'd in between there. That's how you'd write it. This is just another way of writing this. All right. Supposedly, this is going to execute faster. Plus, if there's only a single line of code, you can put it all up here. All right. Now, some people are just so much more comfortable coding like this just because of the fact, that they're used to it from other programming languages. And it doesn't hurt to do that. All right. I just want people to understand that it doesn't hurt. So this means this equal this. That just means that that's what we saw before there. And this means it's an arrow function. All right, so let's actually write the code here. We're going to have a timer in here. Why? Because if there is an error with the height, or if there is an error with the weight, all right, we're going to come in and we're going to set a timer, give an error message, set a timer. Once that timer goes off, the error message will go away, and the bad value that was keyed into the height or into the weight will disappear. All right, so I'm going to start by saying let timer equal null. So that gives us a timer that we can use. We now have a timer to use, but it has no value. Now, had we done this, we would still have a timer, but its value would be undefined. Typically, when you do this, so notice it says timer is declared, but its value is never read. And typically, you're going to do it like this. Now, we still are going to probably get that message. All right, but that's not an error. It's just letting us know that we have a value here that we're not using. That's it. All right, so let's set our height and let's set our weight. So here I'm going to declare a timer. All right. And then here I will read in height. All right, where we'll say height. equals parse int, and it's going to be that value that was in that text box. All right, again, nothing new there. We've done that kind of thing before. All right, well, then let's do the same thing, but we'll do the same thing, but with weight. So we'll read in the weight. All right, and W here and W there. Make sure that you change everything if you're going to do copy and pasting. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to validate the height, and if it comes back as valid, we're going to validate the weight. If we validate the height and it comes back as invalid, we're just going to return. There's no sense in going on. If we validate the height and it's valid, then we validate the weight. And in the same way, if the weight is invalid, we will just stop. Otherwise, we'll go on. All right. So that's kind of what we have to look forward to here. So I'm going to say is valid equal validate height. Now, since I declared the variable height up here, okay, and since I declared it and it's not in any routine, I don't have to even pass it. If I had declared height inside of this routine here, it would be local and I'd have to pass it in the parentheses there. But because of the fact that I declared it outside of any, any function, all right, it's global to the program. So here we're going to call, basically, I'm just going to say kind of what the name of the routine is called, and that is validate height. All right, so again, we want to do three things. One, it's got to be numeric. Two, it's got to be greater than or equal to 1, or to 12, I should say. 3, it's got to be less than or equal to 96. All right. Now, we're going to write more in here. We're going to write more in here in just a minute, but let's write the validate height right now. So I'm going to do a const validate height. There's nothing being passed in, and again, we'll write it as an arrow function. All right. Should put a semicolon here, and we'll put a semicolon here as well. Okay, so what are we doing in here? Well, we're going to be either returning true, meaning, all right, we're going to be returning true, and that's going to mean that is valid. Yeah, we put in a valid height. Or we're going to be returning false here, which means that is valid is false because we put in a height that is not acceptable to the program. All right, so I'm going to return a value. So I created a variable I called retval, which is short for return value. And I'm going to assume it's true. We haven't done anything yet, but I'm going to assume that that's true. All right, okay, so now I'm going to say, I'm going to create another timer and we'll set that equal to null again. And again, just because I'm trying to be consistent here, that'll be my return value. All right, and that'll be another timer. We've already put a comment for that out there before. So now we'll just say range check. How about this? Is NaN and range check on height. All right, so if is NaN height, or the height is less than the min height, or it should be height. The height is less than the min height, or the height is greater than the max height. So those are our possible error conditions. So if any one of those is true, I want to do three things. First of all, I want to show the error message that says height out of range or height OOR. Second, going along with that, I want to say that after 5 seconds, I want you to clear that message out. All right, I want you to clear that message out and set the cursor back on the field in question. Third, I have to set the return value equal to false. All right, because I want to return false to our is valid. All right, so let's do all three of those. Number one, we will set the height out of range message. And we will do that by using the DOM. Two sets of parens there, but I do. So let's see. All right, so height dot next element sibling dot text content equals HOOR. So what that should do is when we run the program to the right of the text box, which holds the height, currently what's in there is a red asterisk. But we're going to change that so it says height OOR. So that's first thing. Second, set a timer to go off in 5 seconds. This is taken from chapter 7. So I'm going to say timer equals set timeout. Notice it's a set timeout. It's not a set interval. The reason that that's important is we only this. So what we're telling you is to wait 5 seconds. After you do, call the routine called clear all. Now we haven't written that routine yet. All right, we'll write that in just a bit. And then we can return, or sorry, one of the set ret val equal to false. Again, that's the equivalent of saying is valid equal false. All right, so this is handling bad. Well, we need an else in there to handle good. And it'll be pretty simple. All right, all we want to do is we want to make sure that that ask that is to the right of our height variable goes away. So I'm going to grab this right here because I want to, in fact, we'll grab all of this. And we'll say set height out of range message area to blank. And we do that by just saying equals double quote, double quote. All right. Now, either ret val is true, and if the if is true, ret val is now false, or ret val is true. If this isn't true, we go in and we do the else, so ret val is still true. Either way, now I can return ret val. Now I want to explain to you why that is important. There's only one return statement in here. So if something isn't working, if a value is not being returned, I know precisely in there where that is. Now, you might think that's not that important. And in this example, it's really and truly not that important. All right. But when you start writing more complex code where you might have in here an if with about 10 or more else ifs and then an else on the end or a switch or whatever, it becomes really important that when possible, you're not putting return statements all over the place in your code. It's just not considered good programming practice. All right. Now we haven't written the clear all yet. We'll write that in just a bit. But now we've got all this handled. All right. So read in the height, read in the weight, and then validate the height. All right. Now, right here, is valid is either true, meaning we put in a valid height, or is valid is false. all right? Meaning we did not put in a valid height, okay? So if is valid, and remember, I know I've said this multiple times, this is the equivalent of saying if is valid equal true, the same thing. So if it's valid, now I want to say is valid equal validate wait. Remember, they both have to be valid, okay? If this is not valid, we can just return because we put in an invalid height. And since we put in an invalid height, what's the sense in checking for a wait? We've already pushed them back into the height. So the good news is I can grab this routine right here, every bit of it, 100% of it, copy it to the clipboard, it in, use it here. So validate wait, red val, that's okay, that's okay. Is NaN and range check on wait. So if is NaN wait or wait is less than min or wait, and I've got to make sure to change these as well. W. Be more confusing to your end user. All right. So I would not recommend doing that. It's not that you can't do it. I just would not recommend doing it, period. All right. So we've now come in and up here, we read in the height, we read in the weight, we tried to validate the height. All right. Then we came in and we tried to validate the weight. All right. So if we get down to here, right here, if we make it to this point, all right, this means a valid height and a valid weight were both inputted. All right. So who cares? Well, what that means is now calculate the BMI and then the BMI status. All right. So we can do all that now. So if it's still valid, and it should be, remember, if we did, when we and we said is valid, all right, when we got to here, it had to be true because if it was false, we did this. All right, and it looks like, let's see. So we've come in here now, all right, we have validated the height, we have validated the weight. All right. Now, when we come back here, we do have to still check because the is valid could have returned false. So we're going to do another if is valid. All right. And we're going to put some code in there in just a second. But again, I'm going to say else return. And I do want you to understand this, where it says else return here, what this means is invalid height inputted. That's the only way that we're going to hit that thing right there, is if an invalid height was inputted. If we hit the one down here, it means an invalid weight was inputted. All right. But if we get here and it is still true, now we can come in and we can set our BMI. All right. And we can, set the status. And I even got a thing in there for setting the picture. All right. So I decided to make a new local variable right here called BMI. So let BMI equal calculate the BMI. So this is a routine that hasn't been written yet. It needs the height and the weight, but since they're both global, we shouldn't have to pass those. All right. Then I'm going to come in. So call routine to calculate body mass index. Okay. All right. Then after that, all right, set the BMI text box value because we have a BMI. All right. So that's result. All right. Now we want to do two more things. And I'm not going to put comments there because I tried to name these accordingly. So I call it set the BMI status. And that will need to have the BMI passed into it because again, BMI is a local variable. So we will set the BMI status. And then after that, we will set the BMI picture. If you don't know what that is, just hold on for a minute. We don't need to pass anything into there. All right. And finally, we're going to set a timer. All right. So I always say this, play computer here. Okay. We've checked the height. We've checked the weight. They're both valid. So we're saying calculate the BMI. Then we've got a text box for the BMI. Put that in there. Then set the status. And that's going to, in that routine, it's going to write underweight, overweight, etc., whatever it has to write. All right, in there. This is going to show a picture down below. All right. Now, it's kind of important that you realize for this picture right here, okay, if I go back into the HTML and you go down to the bottom, okay, there was our height, there's our weight, etc., etc. All right. If I keep going down, this right here, that's an empty div. It has an ID, but right now it's empty. Ideally, if this works when we get all done, you'll have a little cartoon picture in there that will either show a person's height or it'll show a person's weight. I'm sorry, it'll show a person being either underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese. And those are all in an images folder that I added right here. All right. Okay. So what we want to do now is we want to calculate the BMI and it's going in there. Why do you care? That means you have to return something so we can stuff it into here. Now, the good news or bad news, whatever you want to say about it, is it's an unbelievably small routine. So I'm going to return the calculated BMI. I'm going to do that right here. Const calculate, calculate the BMI, and it's going to be equal to, again, we don't need anything passed in because height and weight are global. All right. And the whole formula here is this. It is weight. You can do this in a lot of different ways, but weight times 703, all right, divided by, and I'm going to use the little JavaScript here, so math.pow height 2 dot to fixed to 2 decimal places. Now that's almost impossible to read, so let's word wrap here. All right. So this is saying take our weight. So imagine a person weighed 200 pounds. It's going to take the 200 pounds times 703. Then it's going to divide it by, let's say their height was 72. All right. So it'll divide it by 72 times 72. Then it'll take the results and it'll put it to 2 decimal places. That's the whole routine. That's literally all there is. All right. So we've now got that set. So we've got to write these two things and then our clear routine, and I think we're done. So the next one is set the BMI status. And again, it needs the actual BMI to be put in there. All right, so let's come down here and write that one. Very simple. All right. Set the BMI status, and again, it needs the BMI. So const set the BMI status. Our parameter, what we're passing in, is the BMI. Make it an arrow function. All right. And in here, it's just a big if statement. So if the BMI is less than min optimal, you already know this from what we talked about later. That means BMI is less than 18.5. All right. If that's the case, I'm going to set the status, which is another global variable, set it equal to underweight. All right. So that handled our first case. So if we get down to here, all right, to this else if that we're going to put in here right now, all right, we know that their BMI is at least 18.5. And that's all we know. So else if the BMI is greater than or equal to min optimal. Why I write it like that, I don't know. And the BMI is less than min over. So again, what that means is BMI greater than or equal to 18.5, less than 25.0. That's all we know. But if that's the case, according to our specs, what that means is the person is of optimal weight. So the status equal optimal weight. In other words, they're pretty much the right weight for their height. All right, so that's that one. Else, if the BMI is greater than or equal to min over, and the BMI is less than min obese, all right, then we know that the BMI is greater than or equal to 25, but it's also less than 30. Okay, so they're overweight as far as their status. So the status equals overweight. And finally, if it's not one of those other ones, the only thing that's left is obese. All right, so that's everything. The only thing we have to do now, the only thing that we have to do here is place the status value in the associated text box. And that is $ status dot value equals the status. All right. So now when you look up here, we have now come in and we have figured out the BMI. We have figured out the status. What's new is this: set the BMI picture. And again, it was just something I put in. We didn't have, so we've got to do set the BMI picture. Then we've got to do our clear all routine. And finally, we've got to do our add event listener. All right. Then we'll take a break. So again, the next one is going to be to set the BMI picture. All right. And again, that's going to be a const. All right. This was a const as well. So let's put a semicolon at the end. There are no parameters. Oops. And again, it will be an arrow function. Now, this is a little bit, for lack of better words, quirky. Okay. I had to go online and look and see how I could sit there and using the DOM or using the document object model, how could I add an image, that image to a div. Literally, that's kind of what I keyed in when I searched for it, using the DOM to copy an image to a div. All right. So that ELEM that we did a long time ago, that's going to be equal to document.createElement. So in other words, it's kind of what you think. Create a new image element. That's what we're doing right there. All right. Now we want to make sure that there's nothing in that area. So I'm going to say clear out existing image div area. Just want to make sure it's empty. All right. So I'm going to say, and I called it weight status picture. And I wanted to make sure that its value was nothing. That's just clearing it out, as it says right there. Now I want to switch on the person's status. So again, I want to switch on whether they're underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese. All right. And I'll even put a default in there, which should never be able to be hit, but just for completeness sake. So I'm going to switch here on the status. All right. And again, I've got 4 possibilities: underweight, optimal weight, overweight, and obese. All right. So case underweight. We want to set an attribute. All right. So the source of our image right there is going to be, and we have to tell it where it lives. It's in the images folder, and it's underweight.jpg. Oh, break. Now, then I'm going to do a case of optimal weight. Now, I have to make sure, if you remember here, I called it optimal weight, and it's a little w. If I made this a big W right here, like this, it wouldn't find it. They have to be the same. All right. And I'm going to just copy this and then just change the name. So here it will be optimal weight. All right. And break. And then we will do our case overweight. Copy that in again and change that to overweight. All right. And case obese. Copy that in and change this to obese. Now, I am, like I said earlier, I'm putting a default in here. It should literally not be possible for this to be hit. But as the saying goes, just in case. Okay. So what I did in here, just so you know, was I have an image that's called NA, which just says not available. Okay. Again, didn't have to do it like that. That's just how I did do it. So now we have figured out the picture, but we need to put the picture in the div area. All right, so document dot get element by ID. I'm doing that because I used the selector before. So, and it's called weight status picture. All right. And I want to do a dot append child. And that should be the element that I want to put in there. And that's it for that one. So I have now gone through with what you saw up here. All right. We validated the height, we validated the weight, we set the BMI, we set the BMI status, we set the BMI picture. All right, so there's two more things to do right now. First, we need our clear routine that we called clear all way up above. Again, it'll have nothing passed in, and again, it will be an arrow function. Let's put our ending semicolon there and there. Now, you know this already. I've mentioned this before, that if you don't put in semicolons, almost always it'll work anyway. There are a few exceptions. All right, but you're still best putting them in. So what do we want to do here? Well, that's clearing out the picture that we just put in. All right, so that picture should be gone. Then let's set our weight equal to 0, our height equal to 0. These are all of our global variables. The result equal to the empty string. The status equal to the empty string. All right. And now we want to go back and we want to put nothing in the text boxes. So this will clear out the div area. Clear up picture div area. All right. Reset global variables. All right. Clear out all text boxes. All right. And there's really just there's the height and the weight. And there'll be the result and the status. So let's do those. So All right, so the height is cleared now. The weight is cleared now. Well, we've got a thing called result. And we got another thing called status. All right. The only thing that's left to clear out, or not to clear out, but add the asterisk to the right of height and weight text boxes. Let's move that into 2 lines. All right. So height.next element sibling dot text content equals now an asterisk. And so does the weight one. All right. And then finally, the last thing we want to do in this routine is to set the focus to the height text box. All right. All right. And the only thing that's left to do then is to add the event listeners. All right. Again, we put it under DOM content loaded. Okay. And we're going to make this an arrow function with nothing passed in. Same way we've been doing it in class. All right. At the bottom or at the end, we'll put in our semicolon. And there's just a couple lines. So adding the event handlers. And these are for the buttons. So for the one that's called calculate, when you click the calculate button, we want to call calculate. All right, that's what I named that routine. And when we click the clear button, we want to call the clear all routine. Now, you know this, I've said this many times, but I have a tendency to make mistakes when I type, probably because I try to type too fast. But I'm going to go and run this, see if it works. So I'm going back to my HTML file because, of course, we can only start live server up from an HTML file. All right. Now, if there's nothing in here, well, we get a height out of range. That's a good start because there's nothing in there. All right. If I put in a valid height, I should now get a weight out of range here. And I did. All right. And I'm only getting one of these because I'm only checking them one at a time. So notice now, if I put in a value that's out of range, 999, out of range, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So if we put in a value that is within range, like 72, and we click calculate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. It's actually clearing them both out because I'm calling the clear all. Maybe that's a crummy way to do it, but there's other ways it could be done as well. All right. So let's see. We'll put in 72 and we'll make the person skinny. 111. Calculate. All right. It's giving the BMI. It's not putting it down and it's not showing our picture. We'll have to fix that. So we'll have to fix 2 things here. Resetting the form. That all works as well. All right. But the good news is, so 72, about 177, that person should be optimal weight, and they are. That's good. Let's put in here 222. All right, they're obese, and at about 200, they should be overweight. So that's all working. So what is not working right now is it is not showing us the associated picture. All right, it's not in here. and this should be to 2 decimal places, and it's not. Well, let's see if it's giving us some hints here. So I'm going to go down to inspect, going over to console, and it's got IMG is not defined. That means I left that off someplace. So that says that it is in line 172. So let's start by going over there. All right, so this is the setting the BMI picture. All right. Element. I didn't put this in double quotes. It didn't know what it was. All right, so that should fix that. But why is my thing not going to 2? The dot 2 fixed is not working here. I'm going to put a paren around this whole thing, a paren there, and I'm going to put a paren there. I don't know if that'll fix it or not, but let's see what we have now. All right, I already checked my error conditions. So 72, 111. All right, there's my person who's underweight. You'll see it better. I just made the screen real big so you can see everything. If I do a 72, 7 should be, all right, and it is 2 decimal places now. All right, if I do a 72, a 200, that person should be overweight, and there's that one. All right, and finally, if I do it a 72, and let's make the person obese. All right, so it's all working. Plus, our timers are working, etc. Now, it really wouldn't be that much to come in here and add counters. Could have done that. I just decided to do it this particular way. All right, it is 9:07. Let's come back at 9:20, and I'm going to do the other one, the guessing game, which in many ways will be very similar to this one. So I've got to go get myself a drink. I'll be right back, and we will continue out in when this reaches 9:20. All right, it's 9:20, so I'm going to start back up. Just two things quickly before we write this one. Number one, please remember again, I'm going to hand out the test tomorrow. It'll be emailed to you by 7 a.m. I will go over it between 8:05 a.m. and 8:20 a.m. There are three problems on the test. You're asked to create each basically kind of as in its own folder, however you want to say it. So each will have its own HTML. You can add some simple CSS, and each will have its own JavaScript. There are three problems. The first one is worth 30 points. The second one is worth 40 points. The third one is worth 30 points. You've got 5 days to work on this. I would strongly suggest that when you're working on the test that you have your book, be it if you've got a hard copy of the book or you've got an electronic copy of the book, have that handy and have that open to chapter 6. All right. Also, then on Thursday, because it is a Shadow Attack day for me, all right, I am lecturing, and I'm going to be lecturing on chapters 8 and 9. Get off to a fast start with jQuery and how to use effects and animations. I'll lecture on both chapters. I'm going to do one or two problems for each chapter. One extra exercise and one of the short exercises for each one. We should be able to do all that and get that done in one period. All right, Friday will be lab. The test will be due on Sunday. Now, the only other thing I wanted to mention regarding that is, and I looked at this before. Now, this is page uh, page 151. This is in chapter 4, how to work with Java objects, functions, and events. I mean, in here, they've actually got that working miles per gallon program. All I'm telling you is that when you're looking at this stuff, if you're confused, use your book as a reference. And also, earlier this semester, I mentioned that the W3 Schools DOM reference is really good. Plus, I gave you URLs and I actually gave you Word documents for a couple free code camp articles on the DOM, and I gave you a 126-page PDF from DigitalOcean on the DOM, and some other article as well. So you should have plenty of resources. Guessing game. All right. Right now, it doesn't do anything, as you'd guess. I mean, I can come in here and I can put in a number. But if I guess, nothing happens when I do any of these. So let's start writing the code to make that happen. I'm going to come in here and do a file save on here and close that one and do another file save here, close that one. And then from where I am in here, I'm going to open up the game.html and the game.js. All right, so I now have both of these files. Okay, I should be able to close this. Now it's showing me errors in the game.html file. It's showing me two errors. I don't know where they are. So let's click here and see if I did the same kind of thing I did before. Yep, I got two divs here. So that fixed that, but it still says I have one error. Oh, because I said name is guessed twice. All right, now all the errors are gone. It still works even with those in there, but I'd like just to try to be complete here. So save all and let's go over to our JavaScript. I'm not going to read a lick of this. All right, the only thing that's actually new in here are these last three paragraphs. We're now going to show an image based on the number of guesses they make. So if they can get it in 5 guesses, they're an expert. 6 to 10, they're average. Shorter, because rather than having to verify 2 fields like we did with the height and weight, we only have to verify 1 field, and that's the guess. we could have actually created an array of numbers. And every time we make a guess, we put it in there. All right, we put the guess into that array of numbers. Then we could check, and if the user had already guessed a certain number, we could not allow that guess to take. Here we're going to say that the guess was too low, and you notice I put a blank space. And WC was correct. So those are our 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 7 program constants. In addition, we've got 6 program variables. Remember that most of the time when you're working with JavaScript, most of the time when you create something with const, it can't be changed. All right. On the other hand, we're going to create these variables here and we're going to use let. And when we do those can be changed. So this will be the random number that gets generated for the game. This will be the guess the user makes. These will be the total number of guesses. This will be a Boolean flag for was the guess valid or invalid. Don't know if we had somebody join us or not, so let me check. All right, good morning, Joshua. I'm going over the second of the 2 examples that I sent to the class this morning. We're redoing the guessing game, and we are adding to it the use of the document object model and also the use of timers. All right. The status is going to be the too high, the too low, or was correct. And again, we're going to have an ELEM, which is just short for element. There's no that name. And just like with the last program, that's going to hold the image of that's going to show expert or not or average or novice. Okay. So I started here with a routine called examine guess. Have nothing passed into it, and it'll be an arrow function. And what are we going to determine in there? I'll put determine guess validity. So in other words, we want to make sure the guess isn't empty. We want to make sure that the guess isn't less than 0. And we want to make sure the guess isn't greater than 100. All right. So again, we'll start out with let timer equal null, and that'll be a timer we'll use in a bit. All right, so next we'll check. I made the guessing game field a number field. All right, so I don't have to check, to see if it was non-numeric, other than it could be blank. So if it is empty, what do we want to do? Well, we don't have to do this, but I made an alert. All right, just so it comes up on the screen and it just says, no guess made. Now, we didn't have to do that, just so you know. All right, why do I? Because we're going to put it also out here. It's going to say no guess made or something like that, or non-numeric guess or whatever it was. So in our next element, sibling, and that is going to be right to the right of where we're making the guess. We want to say dot text content equals NGM. And again, NGM was up here, and it was and we'll tell it to clear the form after waiting for 5 seconds. All right. And since there's nothing else to do here, we'll return. It makes no sense to go any further. They haven't made a guess. So if we get down to here, if we get down to right here, a numeric guess was made. That's all we know. We don't know if it's a valid numeric guess. In other words, was it a number between 1 and 100 or was it not? We're not going to check that yet. All right. What we're going to check is we're going to come in here and check to see if the random number was set. So if random number not yet set, set the random number now. The random number is equal to 0. And remember, that's what. All right, so if it's equal to 0, well, we want to give it a number. So we'll say rand num equal math.floor. We've gone over this before. Math.random times 100 plus 1. That will give us a random number that is between 1 and 100, which is our range. Now, we could, if we were testing, all right, and I'll put it in there just to show you, and I'll remove it in a bit. We could come in here and say, test the random number was random. Now that's cheating. I get it. Why am I doing that? Because later, as we said in our requirements, I want to be able to guess this in 5 or less guesses, and then do it in 10 or less guesses, and then do it in more than 10 guesses to see if the right image is shown for the person either being an expert, average, or a novice. All right. So now we will check the guess to make sure the number. It has to be, because if it wasn't, we caught it up above. So we can say guess equals, equals parse int of whatever they put into that text box. And you probably already know this, and I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence, but that said, okay, this is the name in the HTML. This is a name I gave it for my JavaScript. I didn't have to call them both guess, but what it does is it provides a little bit of self-documentation in here. So I can look at, oh yeah, that goes with that type of thing. All right. Again, you don't have to do that. So now I'm going to check. So if the guess is less than min guess, or the guess is greater than max guess. So we're doing a range check right here. So if it's one of these, it's out of range. All right. And since it's out of range, what do I want to do? Well, I want to do three things. I want to give them a message, but then I want to set a timer so that message disappears and their out of range guess goes away. And then I'm going to return. All right. So set error message. And that'll be GOOR, which originally or earlier we set that equal to guess out of range. All right. Set timer. Have it clear the form. And wait 5 seconds before doing that. And then just return. There's nothing else to do because, again, we put in a guess that was out of range. All right. Okay. So if we get down to this point right here, all we know, a valid guess was made. In other words, the number that was guessed was greater than or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 100. That's all we know. We don't know if it's correct or not, but we know they made a valid guess. All right. So we're going to do two things. First, guesses equal to guesses plus 1, or we can say total guesses plus equal 1. JavaScript provides us all four of those ways of doing it. All right. And then next, call figure the lines. We could have probably cut that down and made them the smaller functions. This is just how I did it. All right. So next, we want to figure the guest status. Again, we're not having anything passed in. And again, it will be an arrow function. So we will put our semicolon there. All right. And we'll have another timer here. Status. Okay, that's going to hold our guess. And we also are letting the user know the total number of guesses that were made. Now, again, notice guess status and guess. I could have called that guess. Maybe I should have. That would just mean going back into my HTML and changing it from guess status to guess. Same kind of thing here. All right. If I wanted, I could have made, this is the value it has in my JavaScript. So I could either change it up above to total guesses, or I could change this to total guesses. I don't have to do either one. Right now, I think the names are similar enough that people can associate what goes with what. If you disagree with that, you could always go back and change one or change the other. All right. Check for too low. So if the guess is less than the random number, what I did there. All right, so if it's less than the random number, well, we're going to put into our guess status into that value. And that's wrong. WTL. So again, if I guessed 50 and the number was 75, that's going to say this, which is the guess, 50 was too low. All right. Now, I maybe went a little nuts here, but I said, okay, then let's also set the timer to go off in 5 seconds. All right. Now, I'm going to just steal this code here. And I'm going to say check for too high. All right. So if that's the case, okay. And when you think about it, okay, it's going to clear it, but I could also just return right here, just to be sure. I shouldn't have to, but it's not going to hurt anything. So if it's greater than the random number, then the guess was too high. And again, I can return. Well, if it is a number, if it is a valid number, and if it's not too low and it's not too high, we must have guessed it. All right. So the correct number was guessed. So it'll be an else. And let's just grab these. I don't need the return because I'm at the end of the routine. We could put it in there. It certainly wouldn't hurt anything. So here was correct. And again, we'll clear it out in 5 seconds. That's it. So we could put a return here, but since we're at the end of the function, there is an implied return right there anyway. But like I said, we could put that in there. Now, there's one more thing we want to do. Since we guessed it, we also want to show the picture. And just so you see this, it's no picky. I just went out to the internet and grabbed some stuff. But let's see. There will say your average. That will say your all right. And I don't know if I have a image not available or not. I don't know if I have it in this. I know I did in the other program. All right, let me close those, but I just wanted to show you what ideally is going to be coming up in there. All right. So again, we want to call, this is the only time we're calling show the picture because it worked. So this will be very similar to the way we wrote this before. All right. Let me close this. It's just taking up room right now. There we go. Now, when we did this for the last program that we just looked at, when we did this for the knew that there were only 4 possibilities. Those were underweight, optimal weight, overweight, and obese. Plus, we put a default in there of not available. All right. Now, here we're checking the number of guesses. So I don't want to use a switch. I'm going to use an if statement. So if check for expert designation. So if the total number of guesses was less than 6, and again, rather than using the number, we could have made a constant and called it something like, high expert, set it equal to 6. Why might we want to do that? Because later we might determine that the game is either too easy or too hard, and we might want to change that number. It's no biggie. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. All right. And I did this. I gave you an alert that said expert. Didn't have to, but did it anyway. And then set the picture. And again, the source, whoops. And that will be again from images/expert.jpg, not JPS, JPG. All right, so that's what we want to do for the first one. So I'm going to copy this. And right in here, we will do an else if designation. So here, if it's less than 11, we'll again have that come up and say average, and this will be average.jpg. Then we'll come down here and do it again. And now we're checking for novice. So now if it's less than 11, and that'll have to be an else if, we'll say novice, and we'll set that to novice.jpg. And again, we shouldn't need a last else in here, but I'm just going to say in here, check for unknown. So in other words, you should never be able to get to this, but somehow, if the guess wasn't set, I'm just put an alert in here that just says illegal. That's all I put. And I'll set this to that NA, that not available. And that was just called NA. All right. Now I should have a picture, hopefully. All right. Now this time, just for something different, I did not set a timer here and have this disappear after 5 seconds. And the reason for that is I got a clear button in here. We could put that in, it wouldn't hurt anything. So next, we're going to clear the form. Again, let's put our semicolon there. All right. Put our asterisk back there. We'll clear out our picture, which was this game status picture that's right here. And we'll set focus. All right, we're almost done. Couple more things we have to do. Of course, we have to add our event listener, but we want to do something to kind of, for lack of better words, kick off the game. All right. So we're going to have a start new game because there's a button to do that. And think about what we want to do when we start a new game. Put that there and that there. And let's put a comment here that just says code that runs when the start new game button clicked, because that's what it is. Well, the first thing I have to do is to get a random number. Now, I thought about this later. I'm just going to leave it the way it is, but we're doing that up here. If you remember, way the hay up here. Where are you? There it is. Nope, no, isn't it? There, right here. Okay. So I do want to do both of these things. So I probably could have just written a function and call that function from here and from down here. Just going to leave it the way it is. It's a little bit of duplicative code, but that said, right, yes, it is duplicative code, but like I said, that said, it's 2 lines. It's not terrible. All right, what else do we want to do? We want to clear the form. All right, and when we do that form, we clear that form. One of the things we're not clearing here is the total number of guesses. So I want to clear the total number of guesses here. And we want to set the actual tote guesses equal to 0 as well. All right. So I think there's only one more thing we have to do, and that is to add our event listeners. And there's 3 of them. Okay. So the first one is if we click the clear form, the order doesn't matter, of course, but the first one I did was the clear form. And when we click, that's a button. So when we click that button, we want to call clear the form. All right. Next is going to be the make guess. And again, it's another button. So when we click that, whoops, we want to call examine guess. I think that's what we called it up above. We call it examine guess or examine the guess. I don't remember. Examine guess right here. So that's what we want to call down here. And finally, we've got new game. Again, another button. And it was start new game, I believe. Let's double check that. There it is, start new game. Yep. And finally, we want to just set the focus. Now, I consider myself fortunate that in the last program that we did, it ran pretty much right away. There were a couple glitches, but it wasn't bad. You know, I said this before, that with the way I type, there could easily be mistakes in here. So let's check. So I'm going to do a save all. I'm going to go back to my game.html and try to run it. All right, let's put in no guess. Okay, no guess made. And we get non-number guess. That's a good start. Let's clear the form. In fact, let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I'll put a guess in here and let's put in something out of range. The random, okay, it's 37 was the number we got. Guess out of range. Okay. Let's do it again. Guess out of range. Still is 37 is the number. All right, let's put in something. Let's put in 101. We should again get guess out of range. Good. Clear it. Again, 0 should be guess out of range. And okay. Wow, that went fast, didn't it? 0. Wow, I don't know what's going on with that one, but all right. It was 37. So let's get it in the first guess. 37 was correct, not giving us our picture. Well, that's not great, but everything else looks good. Let's do a new game. All right, now we've got 88. All right, so let's come in here and let's say 80. Guess was, oh, I didn't clear this. For some reason, my total guesses when I came here, that, all right, you have to fix that. So one more new game, and it's 90. All right, so let's do 50. It's too low. 75. Right, again, 75 is too low. 87. Oh, came back and it set it. Boy, some of these are just blipping off of here way too fast. I don't know why. 87 is too low. Let's just guess it now. 90. Waiting, so 90. Okay, now 7 is wrong. Click new game here. I'm getting a new number, and that's good, but this isn't clearing. So let's look at that to begin with before we even look at why the image isn't printing. So start new game, toad guesses. Ah, I spelled that wrong. Toad guesses dot value. That's why that, so that was that error. All right. Let's see if that fixed that. Okay. And that was correct, and it took 5 guesses. So that appears to be working. But it's not giving me my picture, so we should get an error when we do this. Hopefully we do. Tote guess is not defined in line 132. So let's look at that. Okay, that should have been not. So they're all wrong. Okay, so I'll have to change all 3 of those. All right, let's run it again. New game, let's just guess it right away. So 67. Expert, good. And it should clear. No, I think I didn't. I did it. I did, good. All right, so let's do a new game. It's 83. So I'm going to put in here 78. 79. 80. 81. And again, 81. 82. 82. Only 83. Oops. The timing on here is a little hinky. So 83. Average. Ooh, that leaped real fast. So looks like there was a problem with that. So I'll have to check that. See if we do it again. 83. All right. I don't know why it did it the first time like that, but it did. All right. Let's run it one last time. And it's 33. Now you can look at this and say, wow, it's too long before it's refreshing. All you'd have to do would be to change the number. All right, this should be the right one. Wow, illegal. That was interesting. Image not available. 33 was correct. Well, something's wrong there. That's why you test. It should have been here, else if total guesses greater than 11. All right, I don't want to run it again. I'm going to take for granted that it's going to work, and we tested the illegal. All right, so I'm going to save this right now. It's in this more DOM. Yep, that should be it. doing there, but typically I'll do it this way. Okay, so that's now out there. And if anybody wants to look at it, hopefully, it'll help you. And it will be at this address. I will put this out here again later on the email that you'll get from me in a little bit. But it's at github.com/jpscottrankin/moredom. So again, please remember that tomorrow will be JS Hot 3, the JavaScript hot test. All of it will be on 6. There's very, very, very little, if anything. I don't remember if there's anything with timers or not in there, to be honest with you. All right. Again, you'll get the test emailed to you by 7. We'll go over it 8:05 to 8:20. You'll have the rest of the period to work on it. Thursday, I am going to go over chapters 8 and 9 of the book, which is the beginning of jQuery. We'll do a problem or two, but I'll try to set it up so we're done no later than about 10 or so. So you'll get right now, or tomorrow rather, you'll get 3.5 hours. You'll get an hour and a half on Thursday, and you will get 3 hours and 50 minutes on Friday. All right. And the test will be due then. Okay. And then next week on Monday, we'll go over chapters 10 and 11 of the jQuery stuff. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, as much time as we need, we will start building a website that will utilize JavaScript and jQuery with JavaScript. And there is no class a week from this Friday. Excuse me, not this Friday, the 3rd, but Friday, November 10th, there is no class because Rankin gives off for Veterans Day. That's all I got. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 8:05. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello.
Yes,
I have a question.
sure.
So for the last tests, do you have any time for like to me and you go over it one-on-one or that would that be an option? Hello?
Since it's a week late, they're going to get probably no more than a 50. But once I have a grade for everybody, I'll do the test in class.
Oh, you do in class?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for asking. See you later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.